The symposium theme for today is an ecosystem for collective good. And this will also be the topic of our first plenary session. Some of you may have noticed an interesting setup at the corner of the auditorium. That is actually our visual recorder who will be consolidating the discussion points into a visual representation. The visual recorder, can you just wave and say hi? Hi. Thank you. We would like to remind you that you may use your Symposium app to participate in the session. Just click on the pause button to join the Symposium Q&A session. We would also like to remind you that the event pass code is SG SLS 2018. Allow me to repeat, the pass code is SG SLS 2018. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them through Pigeonhole. In this plenary session, our speakers will share stakeholders' perspective in the youth volunteerism and service learning ecosystem.
Through this, we hope you can gain an appreciation of the complexity and challenges of working in the multi-stakeholder ecosystem and be able to explore possibilities of collaborations and maximize opportunities for meaningful service and learning. Without further ado, we would like to invite our speakers for the plenary session on stage now. First and foremost, we would like to invite the moderator for the session, Dr. Carol Ma, Senior Lecturer and Senior Fellow, Service Learning and Community Engagement, Singapore University of Social Sciences. Representing the national perspective, Mr. Tan Chuan-Jin, Speaker of the Parliament of Singapore. Representing the educator perspective, Mr. Puvan Ariaratnam, Director, Character and Citizenship Education Branch, Ministry of Education. Representing the social service perspective, Dr. Andrew Lim, Director, Volunteer Resource Optimisation, National Council of Social Service. Representing the community perspective, Dr. Goh Leong, Chairman and Co-founder, HealthServe Limited. And last but not least, representing the youth volunteer perspective, Mr. Ming, Founder, Campus I, Peer Support Youths.
Hello everyone, welcome all of you to join this plenary session 1. Are you excited this morning? Yes. That's good, I need this energy. Let's give a big hand to yourself, okay? To kick off the plenary session 1. You know, we need this energy to build our ecosystem for collective good. So I'm so excited too, because it's my first time to attend Singapore Service Learning Symposium. I missed the first one, so I got a chance to go to the second one. And then another thing is, I'm so honored to moderate these special sessions. Before we talk about how we can engage other stakeholders to create collective good, maybe we should also get to know our speakers here. So we have the youngest one here. How about we start from Ming? Yeah, Ming, can you share with us your personal experience on your service learning and what inspired you to set up your organizations?
Hi everyone, my name is Ming. I see a lot of familiar faces here. I'm actually a youth corps leader, and I'm a student in SUSS, so I take part-time social work in SUSS itself. I'm also the founder of Campus I, Campus Peer Support for Youth. It's actually a youth-led ground-up that actually trains and equips youth and young adults in the tertiary institutions and the workplace with mental health literacy and peer helping skills. So we partner different mental health organizations like CHAD, Singapore Association for Mental Health, SOS, Over the Rainbow, and so forth. So that's mainly what we do, and we also volunteer weekly in IMH with the different wards. So like the mood disorder unit ward, the early psychosis wards and all. What we do is that we plan games and activities every week for the patients and also festive celebrations like the recent Hari Raya. We also plan festive celebrations for the patients in IMH itself. And every month, we actually plan outdoor sports activities for the youth and young adults who are at risk or diagnosed with mental health issues in SAMH, which is Singapore Association of Mental Health. So actually that, 2 years ago, we started volunteering in IMH in 2016. And that's when we realized that a lot of our friends or people whom we know actually struggle with mental health issues, but they fear of actually seeking help. So that's where we decided to set up a ground up together with the youth and young adults from different tertiary institutions. And then that's how we started 2 years ago. And now it has flourished to about 50 plus of us from the different tertiary institutions and marketplace itself. Yeah, thank you.
So you need more volunteers, right?
Oh yeah.
So if you want to do volunteer, then you can go to Ming also. Yeah, thank you. So to talk about health, I know Dr. Goh, you set up the HealthServe. Yeah, I'm sure that you have a lot of volunteer experience. Then what inspires you to set up HealthServe?
Well, so maybe you ask me, what do I do? I'm actually the longest serving volunteer at HealthServe. So that's how I introduce myself. I think HealthServe, a lot of it has been very relational. I tell people it's about having coffee, and this is what I do. At HealthServe, now that it's set up, I just sit around, have coffee with my interns, our staff, lots of millennials, and they give me the ideas, and we set up, projects, we talk about issues, and essentially that's what has fueled our movement. We do reflection, and we promote something called the reflective practitioner. We believe for all volunteers to come, without the reflection, it's going to be a wasted time. And so with that reflective practitioner approach, we get many who come back. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised to be greeted by one of my volunteers at a special event we did about some 5 years ago. And she's now working with Rainbow. So I think that's fantastic.
And reflection actually is very important in our service learning. I know that Andrew, you were from business sector. Yeah, and so, but you also do a lot of volunteer work.
Yeah.
Can you share with us your experience?
Okay, first thing first, I come from NCSS, and we try to work through our member organization or the charity organizations to reach out to the different groups of concern and very close to our heart. The seniors, the vulnerables, the family, person with mental health issues. So we work through different conduits. And then and the challenges continue to be very complex. But with ecosystem, I think that is where we can definitely find the answer. Personally, I have been volunteering for a while, but what I think is more meaningful to me is when after I joined NCSS, and then we were looking at how can NCSS as the sector leader actually come forward and know what we are talking when it comes to volunteerism. So that's where we started this project Walk the Talk about 2 years ago. And then we tell ourselves when we want to tell the corporates or we want to tell organized groups what to do, we have to mimic, we have to really go through the whole exercise. That's why we get ourselves attached to Rainbow Center for the first year, where we actually go in there, not trying to tell them what we think we can do, but to let them tell us what are your needs, which are the areas that we can serve on a sustained basis. And actually from that experience where I actually serve as an in-class support to the teachers, a class of about 6 to 8 students, my first experience, the first day when I was there was the day when I really, when I told myself, this is what I want to do. In fact, when we were in there, the kids I was attached to happened to be a 7-year-old boy, Leong, multi-disability, can't really talk, and I tried to walk through the journey with him. But at the same time, I also realized that my presence there also helped this other person that is usually neglected, the caregiver. Because for us, when we are there for 2 hours, the caregiver is actually with the boy 24/7. So when I was there, the caregiver actually, after assessing that I looks okay, being a dad myself, it should be okay, she actually excused herself. Next moment, when I visited the toilet, I actually saw her dozing off at the staircase. She told me that she actually only get to sleep about 4:30 a.m. because of breathing difficulties with Aaron. And she had to wake up at about 6 plus 7 o'clock to prepare breakfast for the family, and then subsequently prepare Aaron for the school and stuff like that. And the routine just continue. So she don't really get a lot of rest. So I think volunteerism had taught me many things and allowed me to see and be a lot more thankful.
And we also have a lot of stories, from doing different volunteer work. And I know, Mr. Puvan, you must have a lot of stories because you are from MOE. You have a lot of schools and teachers to do service learning. And then he also sends students, teachers to our graduate certificate in service learning. So thank you very much first. And can you share with us your personal experience in doing service learning or volunteers?
I think we got quite a number of our colleagues here from MOE. How many of you are teachers from MOE here? Wow. There are quite a few of you here.
Thank you.
And they are the ones who are really coordinating, organizing things at the ground level. And I just want to share a little bit about, when I started on looking into volunteerism, I was a principal of a school. And at that time, it was very different. It was called a Community Involvement Program. Our key concern was getting every student to really engage with the community. So what we did was there was, I think many of you will be familiar with the 6 hours a year. So the key mission we had was to give 6 hours of volunteer work for our students. Along the way, we realized that we have achieved that. And for many years, the broad majority of our students, the population as a whole, cohorts of students, have had some experience in volunteerism. But the key thing which has changed from 2012, when we moved CIP to what we call now Values in Action, is really student ownership, student engagement, student reflection. And these are all tied to the core values we want to teach our students in terms of responsibility, in terms of respect. These values are things we want to inculcate in them as they go about volunteering. So the volunteering I'm seeing, which is happening today, very much a place-based kind of volunteering. That's what we are trying to engage our schools in. So it's not about going and doing a one-off volunteering effort, but really within where the school is, within the community itself, how can we bring the community together with the school to reach out to those in need? It's not easy, but over the years, past few years, we've heard many, very good examples of it. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a program. What we need to do is really to engage our community partners, and today there are quite a few of you here, quite a few teachers here, plenty of time to get to know each other and see how we can build on this. The key thing we need to do is to make sure we give our students, while they are in school, a good experience, an experience which will prompt them to want to do more in the future.
And we also need to have a platform like today that we can get together and exchange and also engage each other to create collective good. And Mr. Tan, I really like your speech today. And you mentioned about how we can identify needs and then we work on the program. We need to create impact. You also mentioned about building the capacity. But I actually want to know how we can build collective impact together. You listen, we have so many stories here, but how we can actually build a collective impact for the society. Can you share with us?
Sounds like quite a big topic. Yeah. I think big issues, actually, to me, it's actually very easy sometimes to talk about the big things because, from a rhetorical perspective, from the big picture idea, we should change it and how we change society. But actually, it all starts from actually small pieces of work. Things that are well within our control, things that are within our sphere of influence. Actually, frankly, if we just embark on it and start doing that well, things begin to move. So maybe I'll just share an example on the ground as an MP on the ground. I mean, I'm in my area in Kembangan, Chai Chee. I don't know any of you are my residents? Maybe there might be some. So I have a wide range of residents. I have in Chai Chee 7 blocks of one-room rental flats. And then I have all the way down to Telok Kurau, Kembangan, people living in bungalows, semi-Ds, etc. So you see a very wide range. But a lot of the work that we do on the social outreach side is in the rental areas and the lower income areas. Maybe just 2 quick stories. One, I think just a very quick sharing. What started me off, I've always felt that it was important to forward deploy and do more, but one of the incidents that happened very early on when I came in as an MP that really underlined to me the importance of how much we should be forward deployed to pick issues up is that when I had, we had a family that I know that we were helping, lower-income family, and they had a couple of kids, and their youngest child was a 6-year-old, really cute boy. But the next time I saw the boy was at my Meet the People session. He's 6-year-old, mind you. So when the parents brought him to see me, his head was all enlarged and swollen, and he was in his diapers. And then he was complaining of pain, and it was clearly not well, so immediately I got one of my volunteers, we drove him to KK, and that evening I went to visit them. Basically, in the course of the next couple of days, he had 2 major operations, about 10 hours or so. Basically, he had a brain tumor that was growing, and it was actually progressing on his optic nerve. So he was actually going blind at the same time, and he was constantly in pain. But anyway, long and short of it, the boy passed away. But what struck me was that surely someone must have picked this up. The childcare, the kindergarten that he goes to, neighbors. In fact, actually, I think the parents brought him to KK sometime a couple of months back and wanted to ward him for checks, and then the parents decided that they couldn't afford, which, frankly, there are options available. And they made, I think, what was a wrong decision. But be that as it may, what struck my mind was we can't wait to, that's why I said, I don't want to wait to repair things. I want to pick things up early. And so when you forward deploy, and you begin to realize that what are the needs that are there in the community, and then there are many. And as you begin to be involved, actually what we do and what our volunteers do, so a lot of my volunteers are my residents, or people I pick up on Facebook, or wherever. Hey, can I come and volunteer? It sounds quite interesting. Whatever, I don't really care where they're from, so I'm quite agnostic about it. So even the Meet the People session, frankly, you're a branch member, it doesn't bother to me. To me, let's be community-centered, people-centered, what the issues are, where the needs are, let's organize ourselves. But we also realize that you cannot do it alone, because that's where I want to know the FSCs, because they also have a background. And between us, we figure out what is the real story, because you know how it is, right? It takes a while to figure out what the real story is. And then now we work with SSO. That's why all the agencies, as we began to get together, when we talk about collaboration, actually it's really just about getting people together. So the key really from an organizational perspective is, who is that catalyst or that coordinator on the ground in the community? My conclusion is, I think as MP, not that you are the only one, but I think naturally, I think there is a certain weight that you carry, which people may not like about, okay, I give some face, we try to appear. Huh? But as you appear, you link up with the others, you realize that as you find right in the conversation, there's actually a lot of energy when we begin to get together. So when I see the agencies coming together, the VWOs getting together, and then our volunteers, ourselves, and then we begin to build up networks. So now I have a hoarding team. So straight away when there's a hoarding issue in a HDB flat, HDB will look at it, cluttering of corridor, let's clear the thing. But you realize it's not just a cluttered corridor problem. It's possibly an OCD problem, so the mental health experts come in, and then there's a welfare, do they have other issues? So you have multiple nodes of help, but someone takes the lead, but they are amongst friends, they coordinate, and actually even with PDPA, sometimes you're not supposed to share confidential data, but because we kind of know each other on the side, we tell you, but don't tell other people. But this makes a lot of difference, because we talk about Kwanzi, right? It's about relationships. So actually at the micro level, that's what it is. So what we're trying to do now is, at SGCAS level, is how do you systematize this to some degree? Now, bureaucracy, organization is not a bad word. Without it, you cannot scale. What you want is to be able to scale and replicate. But neither do you want to overly burden the whole thing to become too bureaucratic. So to me, bureaucracy is a good thing, but keep it in small caps, not capital letters. If all capital letters, then you know how it can be. But it's just about people getting together. And what I found is that when you have a clear vision about why we are doing it, and then people begin to realize that it's much, much bigger than just doing that work, I think people are inspired. I think there is a deficit in our society where we don't talk about these issues enough. There is a gap which I sense, talking to many different groups, that we actually want to build something quite different here. And we want to be inspired that it's doable. And like I said earlier, is the wonderful thing is these things don't actually cost a lot of money. They actually is something all of us can do. And I think if all of us begin to pull our weight in some directions and suspend our own very tribal nature, because frankly, even within VWOs, my group, your group, and there's a lot of politics involved as well. But if we are prepared to look past that and begin to build a relationship, I can tell you it's quite magical to see things happen. And as long as we begin to do that, I think that collaboration begins to expand. And at the system level, I guess where we are trying to come from with SG Cares is to see how to create an ecosystem so that the government comes in and value add where we are able to. And then we can replicate this across the board.
And I think we can see this from a micro and macro perspective, as what Mr. Tan mentioned about. And what I actually will do after this session, I will add your Facebook. And then we can connect. Yeah, and so from self, others, and then we'll build network. Yeah, and then so we can also build up relationship. That's what we need to do today, okay? Yeah, and so during the lunch break, then you can build up more network with other stakeholders, okay? So then, so we can, also have a collective group. Yeah, and so we mentioned about some challenges. But I actually also want to know how we can motivate our young people. What are the drivers for us to engage our young people to do service learning or volunteerism in Singapore? Anyone want to start? Maybe Ming again, because you are young. And before this, I thought I'm the youngest one. But I asked him, yeah, how old does he? And then so he told me, and then so I was very sad. But anyway, so you can let us know your views, how we can motivate.
Well, thank you so much, Dr.
Motivate young
Carol.
people to do service learning.
Thanks for the arrow. Yeah, so I think some of the motivational factors that actually motivate our youths who actually volunteer with us. I think one of them is really about relationships, like just now what Dr. Goh mentioned. A lot of them, they come every week to serve with us because they have a group of friends who are like-minded. Yeah, so when you have a team of friends who are like-minded, who have a common purpose to serve a specific community, it actually helps them to keep coming back. Yeah, so after every volunteer session, what we'll do is that we will actually have lunch together, chat about life and everything. So it doesn't make people feel that, you just come here to volunteer for the sake of volunteering. Then people will feel that, you're just making use of me lah. So the thing is, we don't want to have this kind of feeling for our volunteers itself. So relationships are key. I think, so it's a sense of community that you actually belong to. So at Campus I, we really believe in community. Every week we volunteer in IMH. Monthly, we have volunteering sessions in SAMH also. I think the other factor would be really a purpose that is larger than them. A lot of them, they have a lot of ideas. They want to spearhead certain ground-up initiatives or programs itself, but there's no platform for them to actually exhibit that. And I think in our volunteer group, we hope that, they can actually voice out their ideas and to implement ideas through, the different activities that they can do for the patients every week. Yeah, so I think really empowering them to actually have platforms to actually exhibit their ideas or share their ideas. I think that's one thing that helps lah. And also I think challenges, right? Yeah, so now comes to the challenge. Yeah, how do you actually retain volunteers? Youths being youths, sometimes, they will come to volunteer, they say they have a lot of passion. I'm very passionate about youth mental health. I want to do something. Okay? Then after that, second week, you don't see them. so the thing is really, how do you actually retain youths? Because the retention rate, I think VWs also face such a problem itself, retaining volunteers to actually serve the beneficiaries. So really, just now what I mentioned about, about having a community, a sense of belonging, it really helps. And then I think challenges, so really retaining volunteers itself, and also providing them with something that's just larger than them, providing them with different avenues to try different new things. So for us, right, it's not just volunteering per se. We also actually allow our volunteers to actually come up with ideas, like innovative ideas in terms of advocacy. So in the different schools, right, usually mental health is all about talks, roadshows, workshops, right? So what we did was that, we did some ground survey in the tertiary institutions, and we realized that, we wanted to do VR, but we didn't have money. So then, so then we decided escape room. Yeah, so we actually did an escape room simulation with Youth Corps Singapore and National Youth Council and the different mental health organizations. So it's a collaboration between the youth sector, the mental health sector, and the social service sector. Yeah, together with the different IHLs in the Institutes of Higher Learning. So bringing together the different partners, Mr. David. Yeah, so he was our guest of honor. Yeah, so then we actually had this in January itself. Through the escape room itself, we wanted to let the youth and young adults to actually have a first-hand experience of how a typical youth who are struggling with depression and anxiety actually struggle with. And the different rooms, right, you actually have a peer helping room, whereby there will be a trained facilitator who actually guide you on some of the tips, like what are some of the do's and don'ts to actually say to someone who's struggling with a mental health condition. And then finally, we have this interactive booth by the different mental health organizations where they actually have their programs and services, you know, to actually show that to the participants so that if, let's say, they suspect they themselves or their friends have a mental health condition, instead of IMH itself, which they don't really want to go, I mean, nobody wants to go, right? So then there'll be community mental health resources out there, okay, that they can actually turn to or refer their friends to, like chat, for example, at Scape and all. Yeah, so really giving them these opportunities to come up with ideas in terms of advocacy outreach that will actually indirectly help them to actually empower their fellow youths and support their fellow youths. Yeah.
Yeah, we need platform and opportunities. So let me know, how many young people are in this room? Can you raise up your hand? Wow, those who are age 60 also raise up your hand. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good to stay young. And especially if you do service learning, volunteer, then you will keep yourself young. So actually, I also see myself very young. Okay, so Andrew, I know that you're from NYCSG. You work with a lot of NGO. How we can value our young people? You know, our young people has a lot of creative ideas. They sometimes maybe, you know, they say, oh, I come and join you, and then after that they disappear. But how we can value them? How we can make them continue to serve in our society?
I think I'll come from two parts here. Number one, from the social service sector perspective, I think it's a known fact that the sector is serving a big group, but with a very small number. And today we are probably talking about lesser than 16,000 people within the whole sector, adding anything from the front desk all the way to the professionals to the corporate services, and end to end. So from that perspective, actually we need a lot of volunteers. We need a lot of helps, whatever help we can get. And the youth with the energy, with the creativity, is definitely one source that we want. And many of them, if they were to commit themselves and get to know the cause that they are serving in, they can actually be a very good advocate for that either the cause, if not that charity organization. So what we have been doing is to ensure that we are able to retain organized groups like youth or corporates, for example, is to look at how can we enhance the current volunteer management capabilities of our charity organization. In other words, volunteering is a journey, and the journey can be affected if your host is a lousy host or if the experience is no good. And that could be one reason why youth might walk in and say, oh, this is not what I want. I come here to help people, and next moment you ask me to clean the toilet, and they don't see a link. So that could be one reason. So we have been working with a lot of charity organization or member organization of NYCSG to actually see how we can go in there and advocate this volunteer management framework, moving all the way from the buy-in from the management all the way down to how do they define the needs and therefore defining the roles that volunteers can play, and then how do we recognize and retain a whole suite of it under a framework, volunteer management framework. And from there, we hope that more and more of our member organizations will be a very ready, volunteer, corporate-ready charity organizations that will be a very good receptacle for these volunteers and need not be a bottleneck to the whole volunteering journey where you create this hum and then people fall and they say, okay, I'm moving out from it. I have heard of this conversation, a coffee shop conversation, where this guy insisted that, oh, I went to help out this particular cause, and I had such a bad experience, and I will tell you guys, don't go and help out. And when I asked a bit further, the guy refused to tell me which particular organization. We understand that in every sector or industry, there tends to be the better one and potentially the less performing ones. But this sort of statement is a sweeping statement that can potentially discount a lot of the good work done by the sector. So from that perspective, NYCSG, we are working very hard and coordinating under SG Cares to see how we can prepare more and more of this ready receptacle, qualified receptacle, that more youth will come forward and say, I want to help out on a sustained basis, on a regular basis. Ultimately, when we talk about relationship, I never get married to my wife because of one date. It was over a period of time. And same thing to the service users. is the interaction, the frequency of interaction, the time committed by the volunteers that will develop this relationship. So I'd like to encourage the youth, when you look at it, we should go in there with our knowledge, with our passion and aspiration, but maybe be open to find out their needs, and then we go in there as a guest to answer their needs, and then see how we can further improve on it. Then I believe that when you understand the cause that they're serving, the people that they're serving, that is when you see that there is a reason why I'm here.
Yeah, I think to create a meaningful project is also very important. For those who just raise up your hand, so after these sessions, please go to Andrew, because he needs a lot of volunteers, so you can work with him closely, okay? So I actually met Dr. Goh last year at SUSS at a seminar about HealthServe. So I know HealthServe also. I know that you have a lot of volunteers, but can you share with us what are the challenges that you face?
Since we're on the topic of age, I think generational gap is a problem. Okay, so I'm a boomer, but tail end, not so old. But tail end boomer. But I think one of the problems is many of us in leadership positions are older. And I think I grew up in an age, I grew up in a time where, you know, partnerships, we have to talk, we have to learn what partnerships is about, we have to force ourselves to do partnership. But today, the millennials I meet partnerships and collaboration, what are you talking about? It's a given for them. They really are already connected. And they are not loyal to just one, they are just helping everyone. Because as you mentioned, the cause is that, you know, that driving factor. And so the challenge, I think, really sometimes are the older staff, or sometimes for me, our older mindset that I have. And so I've overcome that because I think I mix so much with the millennials, and they've taught me a lot. I give you a very interesting example. About 5 years ago, there was a group of young volunteers, students, university undergrads, and they came to me and said, hey, Dr. Goh, we'd like to do some fundraising for health. I said, all right, cool. So what do you want to do? We'll run a carnival. I said, great, run a carnival. And so at the first meeting, and halfway through talking about the carnival, they said, someone mentioned, but Dr. Goh, you know what, in most carnivals, the problem is very unfair one. I said, what do you mean by unfair one, you know? I said, well, if you go to a carnival, the people with more money or more means will have more, can buy more tokens, they can have more food, more games. So unfair, because you're going to invite the local poor, you're going to invite the migrants, how are they going to afford? You know, all our volunteers can afford, but so I said, okay, very simple. My simple boomer mind said, very solution-based, right? So oriented, I said, give everybody $10 base, and then, you know, you solve the problem, right? No, not happy. So they went back. The next week they came, Dr. Goh, we got an idea. I say, what? What if we don't use money as currency? They say, how do you run a carnival? How about we use stories as currency? I said, we're talking about this old chap here, I don't know what we're talking about. So they say, well, we have many booths, and if someone tells a story, we will then exchange it for a token. I said, I'm not sure who's going to tell that story. But you know something? It was the most successful carnival we had. In fact, I just met someone here just now who was running this part of the committee. She said, Dr. Goh, remember this? It was called Just a Handful of Coins. That was the title of this carnival. And you know what happened in that carnival was that, you know, when the migrant workers lined up to share their stories, they couldn't stop sharing. And they got a token, and everyone else was listening. Now, guess who else was listening in? It's in the community, the stakeholders. So my volunteers, some of them who came, you know, in their big cars, some we have students, we have Singaporeans, we have the local, we have the people from Geylang, all coming and listening to each other's stories. Now, they're my rich friends, because I want their money, right? So I invited them for the carnival. And after they had lunch with me the previous week, they said, okay, come for carnival, they come. They found out that in order to play the games and get the food that they liked, they saw the laksa very good, they had to go tell their stories, and they did. And you know something? It was a wonderful time of community. And so these are, I would say that happened because I took the risk, and many of us in the leadership took the risk of letting the youngsters, the students, have a safe space to express their ideas. And we have to take risks, but sometimes it might fail, but in this case it was a happy ending, you know.
Yeah, but I also see that you mentioned about age, right? That means we have lots of opportunity to create more intergenerational project. Yeah, because we can learn from each others, right? Yeah, and those who raise up your hand, who say you are young, again, yeah, come to find a partner in this room, and then maybe we can create more intergenerational project in the long run. So, Mr. Puvan, yeah, you are from education sector. Yeah, you know that a lot of schools now, they do service learning as a means to address VIA. And service learning is getting popular in Singapore also. So what do you think about how can we do the creative, positive service and learning impact?
I think, in schools, one of the key ideas is to get the students to understand the benefits of being involved in the community. I think Dr. Goh shared a very good example of the creativity of our youth. So it's not about getting them to into a fixed pathway, but allowing them the space to find out for themselves exactly how they can contribute. One of the, our young, in terms of the kind of projects they want to do, they want to be, they want to serve. When the Singapore Kindness Movement put up something to get young people to come together to set up something, to start up something, they call it GUMS, ground-up movements. So there's a whole list of young people who have come together to do different things, very interesting things. If you go to the SKM website, you can see all the different things, from just picking litter to a whole range of things. So the traditional way in which we see volunteerism in terms of going and serving in a particular organization need not necessarily meet the needs of all the young. So in terms of casual volunteerism, the young are more into doing a particular project. They're looking for something to do. The question is what they want to do may not necessarily meet the needs of the community as well. So what we are looking at and what we need to do as a collective here is really to see how we can nurture the young such that they understand better the needs of the community. And then there's some synergy in terms of what they do and how they can meet the needs of the community. So it's not a lack of wanting to do things. I don't see that happening in our young. Even in schools, the way in which the students have stepped up has really changed considerably. Our last data point shows that close to half of our students at last year's Sec 4, that means over the 4 years, about half of our students have actually participated in a group to engage the community. So it's not about a class of students going to do something volunteering, but really groups coming out with ideas. And that is the big change we are seeing. That means students on their own, taking the initiative to want to do things. So the question for us is, how do we facilitate these good intentions with outcomes which will benefit those in need, rather than come up with ideas and continue, like what speaker has just pointed out in terms of the different things which students do, but is it really meeting the needs as well? So that nexus we need to think about a bit more.
And that also may be a platform for us to work with more VWO to understand the need of the community, and then to let our young people to understand the needs, and then they will create meaningful projects together. I think that's very important too. Yeah, and so, for service learning, we talk about, the needs, we talk about young people. Actually, before these sessions, what I did, I actually searched all of your background. Yeah, and I also searched Mr. Tan's your pictures on Google. Yeah, a lot of young pictures, very handsome. Yeah, I want to ask, yeah, you as a speaker, so how can you be the role model to our young people here? Yeah, can you, yeah, it's very difficult questions, I know, but how can you inspire our young people here to do more for our society? Yeah.
This kind of question, how to answer? A bit Howlian, right?
I have already told you this session is very relaxed and informal, okay?
I really do feel very strongly about this, and maybe I just very quickly share with you why I find it. I mean, some of you will know that I used to be in the army, although sometimes I wish I stayed on in the army. And curiously enough, actually it was, I think, a lot of these insights about these issues that I've shared, actually it came from my own experience. As a battalion commander, that's when you take in your 18-year-old boys for 2 years, and I had the privilege of commanding them for 2 years. Literally on the day they came in, shave off all their hair, and then taken them for 2 years. But one of the things I realized very early on is that you train. Of course, later in another capacity, your role was to structure the army and buy. People go to other countries to shop by going and buy tanks. And you can build all this, you can train. But one thing you realize that, and while those things are important and complicated, there's the other part that was really quite critical, is whether do your soldiers believe, national service got to do, right? So they have to do it, but is your heart and soul into it? Do you believe that this country is worth fighting for and worth dying for? And you cannot buy that, and you cannot structure that. But it's so important. So how do you then nurture? How do you then try to draw that out? So to me, the two areas of work which I have continued to do till today, which I feel that is important. One is leadership. You talk about role modeling. I think leaders play a very important role because leaders do a few things. One is, I think you need to be able to inspire that sense of trust. And if you believe that some of these things are important, hopefully because people are prepared to follow you, they're able to also then embark on that journey. And leadership is about trust. And trust ultimately is about values, who you are as a person. So, and many of you here are leaders in your own right. It's not just, you need to be wherever. We all have a sphere of influence. Are we able to do good and inspire those around us as a role model in different ways? So leadership is one area of work which is important, which is why, to me, I still go back to the SCF, Civil Service College, and now I think with the universities, there's some programs you're working on. For our future leaders to begin to introspect and realize, like as what we have been sharing today, about how they can actually play a much bigger role. And the other one actually is volunteering, because I realized, and that was my takeaway from when I was organizing National Day in 2009. That's where I met Puvan also, and I think the rest, a lot of outreach, wanting to be inclusive. And of course, I'll tell you honestly, because 2009, you remember, was a global financial crisis, right? So I thought, my NDP better do some CSR work, because otherwise people accuse you, wow, spend these millions of dollars popping fireworks and people are unemployed. Because how was I to know that the global financial crisis for us in Singapore didn't last so long, because we bounced back very quickly. So, but I felt it was important because, we have so many people participating, the fun packs. And then we went to the prisons as part of Yellow Ribbon, got the inmates to help pack. We were with IMH, that's where I get to know a lot of the people there, and we continue partnership today, CC Hospice. But my takeaway was, again, that I realized that actually in this process, the impact was actually on my commanders and men who were involved. For example, when I went to CC Hospice, our 21-gun salute, right? You bring the cannon there, then our artillery guys do some of the drills, the military police with their rifles. But as we were sharing, and we realized that actually our performance there that day was probably going to be more important than on 9th August itself. Because for many of the residents, and I remember there were kids there as well, those who had cancer, leukemia, etc., they were never ever going to see this again. And that's when I also realized that even as the many different things that we do to try to nurture that sense of nationhood, nation building, this part, as I shared earlier about giving, was actually one way for us to begin to connect with the community. And that to me was where I realized that actually these were the two areas of work which I think was important. And I guess, so to me, you talk about role modeling, I think you don't have to be of a certain position. You realize that leadership is not about a position. I can make you a GM, I can make you a CEO, but it doesn't make you a leader. It's a position, it's a post that comes with certain legal responsibilities, fiduciary responsibilities. People look up to you because it's your job, right? So I better listen to my boss. But whether you are a leader or not has nothing to do with the post. It's about you. And in big ways and small ways, we lead and we can influence. And if we believe that there's something much bigger and something more meaningful, and I can tell you this, my own sense is that it depends on how you look at people. You can look at people as the type X or type Y, people who are inherently lazy, trying to take advantage of the system, or actually people, I think deep down inside, aspire to want to do good. We all would like to believe that we are not just a cog in this big machinery. We are individuals that can make a difference. And I think it's about, and I don't think people are afraid of hard work. I think what people want is purposeful work. And leaders help to sense make so that we understand and connect the dots to realize that what we do actually really matters. And I think that's something that I think all of us can be role models in all our different ways. But our problem is we are always talking about our other leaders criticizing. We are very good at critiquing. We are very good at commenting. But the thing is that if we just focus our energy in a positive way to just do and use whatever influence we can, and in our own small ways, all these little circles of influence begin to coalesce and things begin to move. So role modeling really is something that is well within all our capabilities.
Thank you. Start from yourself, start small, and then you can make a big impact. Yeah, and I have one more questions to Andrew and Mr. Puvan. So from NCSS perspective and MOE perspective, how can we establish effective partnership?
I suppose partnership, as the word define, it means two persons coming together. And it's difficult for two persons to come together without understanding first. So from that perspective, I would encourage the understanding to start with small steps, and then getting yourself involved. And it's only through involvement that you actually start to appreciate. It's like what speaker mentioned earlier, there's this tendency of us as human beings to point. So, but most of the time we point because potentially lack of understanding. So understanding, I see that as one thing, and that's why NCSS in our we actually roll out a sector roadmap for the social service sector last year, July, which effectively is about 1 year now. It's known as the Social Service Sector Strategic Trust, or 4ST in short. We look at 3 parts with the vision of empowering every person to live with dignity in a caring and inclusive society. 3 portions, we look at the individual as service users. How can we empower them? And then when we look at the people who are playing a part within the sector, the social service entities, how can we uplift their capability? How can we actually make them a stronger and more meaningful receptacle and providing the services in a very innovative way that will meet the needs of our service user? And the last track is actually building an ecosystem. The last track is looking at building an ecosystem so that individuals like you and me or organizations can actually give your time, your money in a more meaningful, impactful way. And the last part is a lot of work needs to be done because ultimately it's an ecosystem. But partnership is definitely something that we have to work towards. And we just want to encourage everyone to understand what is involved. Come in with your creativity, with your energy, with the additional things that you can have. For example, the youth, the bo-chap kind of thing without baggage, you come in, but maybe also look at the needs that they are trying to serve and see how we can match these two.
Just following up on that, what we are also encouraging our schools to do is to really look at place-based education. It's within where the school is located. What is around the school? And we are seeing very good examples, but we can do more in terms of how the school better understands the needs of the immediate community. And then in terms of our organization, how we encourage our students to meet these needs. It's not an easy task. And every year, every 6 months, things will change in the community. So working with community partners within that ecosystem is something becoming even more important, especially as we want our young to have a good experience in terms of sharing what they have, as well as serving the community. One example, is I went to a school and the principal told me about this number 2168, which he continuously, puts across to his students. So when I first heard 2168, it's a 4 number. I was not sure why, but 2168, you got 168 hours in a week. Correct? So what he has inculcated in all his students, you say, you got so many hours, 168 hours in a week, 2 hours you spend on serving the community. If we do those kinds of things, the 2 hours spent serving the community can be with your family, So not necessary for the school to be the one which is really pushing our students, engaging our students to go and serve the community. It could be as part of your family. So he leaves it very open. Part of your family. It could be part of your co-curricular activities. Get your friends, soccer team, go and do something, teach younger students soccer, whatever it is. But bring about an understanding that it's your responsibility, and you will feel good if you are able to go and make a contribution which is appreciated by those you serve. So I think we have we basically want to encourage our schools to come up with these kinds of different ways in which to motivate our students. Like we spoke about earlier, the real situation is that the young are motivated. They want to serve. They have a very strong social consciousness. The question is, how are we nurturing this? And how are we making it a meaningful experience? So through our Values in Action program, our intent is to provide our students, the vast majority of students, with these opportunities, which will then hopefully self-motivate them to take part in community activities, to take part with the VWOs on their own accord as well. The school by itself can only do so much, because our duty of care for the students is not easy for the school to organize these kind of things on a regular basis. But if the students take ownership of it and they grow into young adults in polytechnics, ITEs, universities, pre-universities, they will then take on what they have experienced and do something for the community.
Can I just add? Yeah. Puvan offer 4-digit. I also have another 4-digit. 5090. Yeah, 5090. Actually, in 12 years' time from today, today we have about 500,000 population that are 65 and above. In just 12 years' time, we are talking about 900,000 population above 65. So that to me is actually quite a scary number. Okay, so that's a number for you, but World Cup's still on. Just to add on to what Puvan mentioned, in fact, collaboration is so important. Tapping onto the VIA platform, we have actually entered schools and, for example, ACSI, a conversation that started last year, have resulted in a very meaningful VIA project by the secondary 3 students, where they have actually entered into the homes of the elderly as part of the home befriending program. And 2 hours again, they will do it once every week, just for 2 hours. They'll go in there, befriend maybe 2 or 3 seniors. Initially a bit awkward because of language, because of generation gaps. But the end of it, right now, what we are hearing from the school is that the students have developed this relationship. Students are learning the dialects from the Akong Ama, I hope the correct dialect. But the relationship are being built, and then the whole schools are now very positive that the students will actually walk out from the program with the correct value instilled in them, to now look at seniors and to now know that what are their needs and to be able to better appreciate. So that is actually one very good example of the schools being open, looking at the needs around the community, coming forward to have open conversation and strike this partnership and collaborative spirit.
Thank you. Collaboration actually is not easy at all. But, we also have, audience here. They pose up questions. Yeah, and it's about, let me see whether the screen have the questions. I want to echo to one of the questions mentioned about collaborations. There are sometimes some resistance to collaborations. What is your experience in bridging the barriers? You talk about collaboration, then any barriers you have, how did you bridge it?
Okay, speaker mentioned earlier about the SG Cares movement and the 2 pilot sites we have in Bedok and in Jurong East. For example, the one in Jurong East that was conducted somewhere end of May, I was part of this table discussion. Seated around the tables, there are people from the schools in Bukit Batok, there was a religious organization, and there are some social service organization. And it was through that introduction and conversation that people start to understand. For example, in Bukit Batu, there's this Club Hill. They have been doing counseling work, speaking to the youth, but they're actually short in terms of the space, the physical space to conduct counseling. So they've been doing it during the afternoon in the empty, quiet stadium, for example. So they voice out the needs. And then on the other side, the church was telling them that actually Monday to Saturday, my church is very much empty. Why don't you come over and use my space? And then at the same time, Club Hill did mention that, hey, I'm short of volunteers. And to many or around the table, they say, oh, secondary school, a bit awkward. But immediately to Club Hill, they say, hey, actually secondary school students are the group that we want. So what I'm trying to say is that collaboration starts with open conversation and understanding.
How about Mr. Puvan?
I think it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all again. So when we talk about, I was there with in the Jurong discussion as well, and really what it did was it opened up possibilities, and so it's not going to be easy. I think if we go away thinking that we just go and look at a VWO close by to where I am, and then we start doing, it won't work, because there are different, like for example, whether you talk about students are young, each of them have got different interests as well. So it's about matching some of these interests. So I think the key is to keep going at it until we reach out to sufficient numbers so that there's impact felt around. Once they can see that what they are doing is making a difference, then it spirals.
So maybe just add that there will be resistance. I mean, you have been in the sector long enough, you will know there are issues. My first encounter with VWOs was actually during the tsunami. When the third ship that came out, this was in Aceh, right? And all the VWOs came supposed to go and help. And then they started bitching about, I don't want to be with this group, I don't want to be with that group. I was horrified. To me, I don't ever want to have anything to do with VWOs ever again in my life. Of course, later I became MSF, so problematic. But anyway, the point is, look, I mean, in my line of work, whether in my capacity as president of SNOC, doing all my NSAs or with all my clans, every group that comes together, there will always be politics, right? So let's not have any illusions. But it's okay. It's human nature, but that shouldn't put us off, because there's so much good that also can come with those who are prepared to work. So if you're ready, we work together. If you're not, it's okay, but just know that what we can facilitate on our part, certainly on the government's part, is information. We can help you be a bit more targeted in where you're doing. If you don't mind, you know how it is, right? Every time Chinese New Year, everybody distributing food, Christmas, then the rest of the year people starve. Actually, if I coordinate by time, actually February no need lah. March cannot. Okay, March. Then you go April. So basically, same amount of food I distribute 12 times a year, I got once a month. Rather, everything all come within the festive period. Or divide by block. So by time and space, because Lobang is at block 35, so you think, but actually block 33, which nobody has any connection with, actually we have needs there as well. If you don't mind, I'll let you know where. So, but there are some groups that are not interested. I met this, I won't mention which, but it's a religious group, quite active. And then I asked them, look, why don't we collaborate? Then, no, I'm not interested. All this very political, all this grassroots, don't know what. Okay, never mind, it's okay. But if you ever want to collaborate, let us know. We are quite happy to share. And it's like that. So I'm under no illusions that there will be those who will come forward, there will be those who don't. But what we should celebrate are those who are prepared to. And like, the examples that we share, I can tell you it is quite magic. I mean, you can see for yourself, right? Just now, I'm sure some of you meeting up with each other, the energy levels. So sometimes on our own, we may not do it. Sometimes we have misperception. Hey, this group cannot make it. The way they do it, I don't agree with the philosophy. But when you humanize the relationship, different one. Actually, we share quite similar perspective. Because we are all structured by perceptions, our own bias. So, like I said earlier, it's about Kwanzi, it's about relationship. Once I establish a connection, things begin to move. So the idea really is facilitate opportunities. Those ready to move, we move. Those not ready, never mind. But if we are able to move and people all celebrate, afterward, you also want to create a sense that, hey, I also want to be part of this. It seems to be moving. And I think that's really, so again, let's not get stuck with the areas that don't seem to move, because there's so many other areas that can move. And if we just embark on that, that's really going to consume all our time. And then when the others are ready, then I think we come forward. But just create more opportunities to get together. And I think our own experience, certainly bringing the different groups together in some of this pilot, and certainly my own experience on the ground, even with our own agencies and all that, is quite remarkable. It takes a bit of time, but actually you see magic happen.
Yeah, from the HealthServe story perspective, I think, which is mentioned already about relationships, I think friendships in this is really important. You know, if I know you as a friend, now I met you, you know, we can jump strong, right? And even if something that doesn't, seem to sort of meet or might collide, I think friendships are really important. They hold us together. This common cause is important. And the other thing, apart from friendship, is generosity. I think we need to be open. Come use my facilities, come use the training. I share my know-how, I share my expertise. And when we are generous, the other person will usually reciprocate, is it? So I think if you're all generous with each other, then I think it will really grow. And that's something we found out. In the work we do at HealthServe, one of the things we practice is called the open learning platform. So we like our interns, volunteers to come, you learn, and if you can, set up your own. We're happy to encourage you, or even sponsor you in terms of support and all that. And very often they come back and give back again after many years. So I think in our relationships, if good friends, we can get stuff and borrow from each other. It's a lot more fun, and I think things will work. You bring down the resistance. We disarm someone by just being friends and having coffee.
Yeah, be open. Yeah, I think that's very important. And I have another question from the audience. Is highest vote. Yeah, and mention about many service learning and volunteering projects start with very good intentions. But what happens when there is no impact or when it causes harm? Do we prioritize students' learning over the beneficiary well-being? So this is about students. Yeah, I know Mr. Puvan want to answer.
No, I think it's a good question. And the question we need to ask ourselves, especially the teachers here, when we talk about teachable moments, we talk about teachable moments not only in success stories, but also in failures. So the fact that you provide an authentic experience provides an opportunity to really turn that story around. So the education, I think there was another question which quite a number of people asked as well. How, in terms of education, what is our role where VIA is concerned, values in action is concerned? Is it only for education? Is it, do we only teach the students, or must it necessarily be these kinds of? I think really, if you can give an authentic experience, whether it works or not, they will learn from it. The question we are putting across is, what kind of reflection do the students do in their engagement? Is volunteerism only about doing, or should it be about doing and then understanding and then reflecting on how they can do it in a different way? So I think the entire process is a learning experience, whether it succeeds or not.
But maybe I talk a bit about the damage part, the harm and etc. So this is where, like I said, sometimes, so ownership is important, and I mean, we were talking about this, but it's a fine balance. Because like sometimes we actually don't understand what the needs are. We go in there, and you know how it is, right? You go in there, or you read online, and you think you know, and you go there, and sometimes with a messiah kind of syndrome, you go there, you want to save the world, help them, but actually, are we doing more damage? Like all this discourse that's presently going around, right, about, is it tough love, is it? I mean, being on the ground, working with the different families, I can tell you, it is complex work. It is not straightforward to pigeonhole into these things. And sometimes by being overly generous, you can actually do damage. Self-entitlement comes at all levels. I work with, for example, Willing Hearts, so I provided them, we set up a VWO hub, I provided them the facility in Ubi, where now the kitchen is, and some of you work with them. So I collect food, and based on our assessment, and who are some of our residents who need some help, I mean, if we can offset and save them a couple of dollars a day with a meal, it helps them have a bit more buffer with what they are provided with. But I have residents with them, this one again, I'll throw away the food. Or some, because we give out groceries to residents who need a bit of help. When they come and see me, you look at them, they talk to you, very tough, life is really tough. But I get to know because my residents, other residents will send me message about, why are you helping this guy? Then they show me video clip of him in the coffee shop, sio hong ki la, drink beer, whatever, lawa, walk around, big time. But then come and see me at the time, very chum. But you see, when you work in this space, you realize after a while, things are actually very complicated. Even as MP on the ground, I regularly get conned. Because my residents make sure I know. You know what you do? You give this $30 voucher to this guy. You know what you do not? Because although I chop no alcohol, no cigarette on the thing, he will sell the $30 voucher to another resident for $15. Then you get $15 cash. Then I can go and buy my anghun or whatever it is that he buys. But that's the way it is, right? So sometimes when we go in, we are overly generous. Because when we're not involved, we read all the stories, we think that all these people need all the help. You go in, you help. But actually, are we reinforcing wrong behavior? So it's a bit philosophical, because some believe, I recently I read some social workers talk about, but for some of these poor families, having the big TV is the only thing, okay, maybe that's one perspective, but why some of them end up in debt is because they go to courts, and because 0% interest, I buy big TV and then end up in a debt, but I can buy a smaller TV. And I've got other families, similar profile, who manage it in different ways, but we need to also help ourselves. But we are overly with good intention, wanting to do good, but we could actually do harm. You could imagine as we help out, as we talk about isolated elderly, I could imagine this group that comes in, every week we buy all sorts of stuff. You can actually spoil them. Do they really need? They may not. But because you create needs, you create demand based on, sometimes supply itself creates demand. I know of groups that go and, because we had to deal with all this cardboard collecting aunties and uncles, right? And when I was MSF, I told my social workers, all these pictures that they post, all these very chum elderly folks, I want to know their dossier and their profile, because if they need help, we should be helping. If not, but we worked it out, and we actually know a lot of the backgrounds, and we spoke to some of them. Some of them need help, and they're being helped, but then some of them share that, since you want to give us free food, we go, lor. So we're always there. So we need to be careful. But again, it is an open space. If you want to do what you want to do, that's okay. We would like to share that how can we be more targeted. But certainly in the schools and all that, I think we can try to structure some of these programs so that as we help in a way that is constructive, that actually would also help individuals in a meaningful way, rather than sometimes overindulge. Because those of you, especially working with children's charities, sometimes we could actually be overly indulgent, because we go in at one time, we're super generous, but for the VWOs who have to deal with the kids every day, they need to also regulate and manage, how you learn, what you draw. So this is where, even as we encourage more to do good, you can begin to see the potential challenges that can exist. So this is where, that's why I say curation is important. So those who are in the sector needs to take an active role to shape that experience for our volunteers, so that not only it's not just about student learning or volunteer learning. It needs to be needs-driven, but at the same time, also learning it in the right way. Because you can imagine, I was working in some university students, because regularly we have an effort that helps to clean up the flats of some of my folks who have various issues. And I can imagine if you don't manage a learning lesson, I go in, and some of my flats are quite jialat condition. And I can imagine you walk away thinking, how on earth can we have people in Singapore living in such abject conditions? It is a travesty. System has failed them, society has failed them, government has failed, whatever. But then I'll tell them, hey, go next door, no? The auntie has same profile, also on public assistance. House is spick and span. Because they may have OCD, they may have their own issues or habits that they don't maintain. That's why it ends up like this. So we could, even in doing good, we could also draw wrong conclusions if it's just an in and out. So I think it behooves us who are in the sector and understand some of these issues better, to use this opportunity to also help, even as we do good, to learn, so that we really help effectively, and to really grapple with some of the complex issues that we are grappling with.
Yeah, needs-driven is very important. Avoid service learning pollution too. Yeah, and so how about we go for the last one? The last one, then I want Ming to answer this, because I know that you leave school already, right? Yeah.
Oh, I haven't. I'm still studying.
How can we encourage your peer to continue?
You're in the school of
serve?
life.
Yeah.
But thanks, Dr. Carol. Yeah. So I think after we leave school, how can we continue, right? I think I started volunteering when I was in Ngee Ann. my directors and lecturers are here. Yeah, so back then, you know, I didn't know what, I wasn't involved in volunteering and everything, and I wasn't very regular. I think really during school time, be it in JC, poly, or even secondary schools or primary school, probably can start young, so that you'll know that volunteering is part of life. Then thereafter, after you leave school, right, if possible, I mean, try to join, there's a lot of different grown-ups or volunteering groups out there. I mean, they're all on Facebook and all. So try to find the social cause that you are passionate about. So for example, for myself, I'm passionate about mental health. Previously, I was working with at-risk youth. So the thing is, youths, I think they change quite fast. So, yeah, so after they change ready, right, look for the organizations that can actually provide you with such opportunities. I mean, there are different VWOs, grown-ups that are out there that focus on different social causes, like special needs, you have Rainbow Center. For mental health, you have SOS, SMH and all. So once you find the different programs and services that are available out there for these different VWOs, then you can actually write in, you either email them, or if you have friends who are already serving in the organizations, or better still, if you have friends who are working in organizations, try to actually ask them if it's possible to actually volunteer with them. I mean, if you start once, then if you like it, then yeah, then you'll continue. I mean, the experience really helped a lot. Yeah, I mean, if let's say, I have friends who actually want to volunteer. A lot of youths, they want to volunteer, but they don't get any replies from the organizations itself. And hence, this discourages them from continuing to volunteer itself. So some of them, they didn't give up. Okay, they started their own initiatives. Yeah, be it from the ground, or be it from, or they start their own non-profit and stuff. So as to rally like-minded youths to actually join them itself. So this might be another way also. Yeah, and yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Before we, close this session, how about the last one? Yeah, give us one important tips how we can promote service learning or volunteerism in Singapore. Short and one important tips. Okay.
Oh. Well, I mean, maybe just to build on this, lower barriers to entry. Make it as easy as possible. I think sometimes, I think many people want to help, but they don't know where, and then, but a bit complicated, I'm not trained, don't know whether I can or not. And then we're also busy, and then by the time I think about traveling there, I'm already tired already, so I don't go. So a lot of things get in the way, right? Going to watch a Korean drama, so there are many distractions that we have today that just gets in the way. So there's a lot of inertia. What do you want is take that first step. So that's why in school, if we can do it well, you lay the groundwork. And no pressure, but no, because it's a captive audience. Because once you leave school, I got no control, right? The other segment, which I feel is important, is the corporate, because we all of us work. So at the workspace, if the company, if I can convince the CEO or the COO or whoever that's in charge, and they buy the idea that, you know what, I never saw CSR through this angle. It's interesting. In fact, I'll make all my staff do this. Okay, so at work is another powerful, and the wonderful thing about work is that they have a corporate organization. It actually saves the VWO from doing all the other organizational work. So if we can also make it easy, and to me, that's why, when you go Airbnb, right, you click where you want to go, then you see around there, within a 1 kilometer space, 1.5 kilometer space, what's available, this and that. I think we're trying to create apps that can generate so we know what it is. So it's literally at your doorstep. Before you go to work, we go there and drop by. For example, I spoke to Postbank. Instead of doing just one big thing, which of course they still continue to do, but your branches. So one of the branches near my Chai Chi, where we have a nursing home they just built. So before, I don't know which day they go, but before they go to work, they go to the nursing home, help the old folks with exercise and all that, and then after that they go to work. But I think there's a strong business proposition because it deepens staff engagement. We are not going to do a barbecue together and have fun, but we're doing something special and meaningful, and I think it deepens staff engagement. So if you lower the barriers to entry geographically, after work we pop by, etc., near my school, and community, which is literally at your doorstep, next block, just a couple of streets down the road, you make it easy, and if you can curate knowing where the demands are, I think all these little things help to lower barriers to entry so that that innate desire that we all have, hopefully kindled and sparked alive when we're in school, and then it continues at work, and because it's accessible, and that's where I think there is a momentum. But don't be discouraged if people stop, because we all have different life cycles. I have people who suddenly pop up in my doorstep and say, oh, remember you visited me 3 years ago? Now I'm here, ready to volunteer. Because at the time, I remember this lady, she just had a child. But now the daughter, in fact, now the daughter's about 6 years old. And she just started 3 years later, after a house visit, I talked to her. She was interested, but she wasn't ready. But 3 years later, she just suddenly appeared. So, it's one of those things, but just make it accessible. And I think those of us in the sector, especially on the demand side, think about it from that perspective. We organize this space well, it also helps sustain a lot of these efforts.
Make it accessible. Okay, Mr. Puvan.
I think just want to share one story which was related to me by a primary school teacher. So this primary school teacher took the students to old folks' home. And before they went, they of course planned. She talked to them about what they can do for the old folks. So they went into groups and they started planning. And they all decided to go and sing songs to the old folks. So the songs they knew were all the pop songs and things like that. So they went there and they started singing, and the old folks all were like, they didn't really, they were not appreciative of the song. And when they came back, the teacher did some reflection with the students. And the reflection part is what is most important. So when she talked to the students said, oh, teacher, they didn't like our singing, and they were not interested. We put in a lot of effort. They all old people. But then, as the conversation went, she asked the teacher when I asked them, what do you think they like to do? What was there in the home? And then one of the boys stood up and said that actually, they like to do gardening. Their garden was very nice. So then it went on, a conversation went on, why don't we plant things for them? So they were going to go back again later, the following month, I think. So they used their empty bottles and things like that, and they planted things which didn't grow very well. But they took these plants to the old folks' home again. And this time, there was a connection. Because these people there, they were very proud of their garden. So they took the children, and then they showed them how to actually do potting, and taught them things. And then there was a connection. So, apparently when they came back again, they did reflection. And this time they were very much more positive. We can do something to help. So that meeting that needs is not something that we need to pre-plan per se. Sometimes we must allow the students, our young, to go and see for themselves. So that's what we can do in the schools. We can provide them that opportunity to see for themselves what there is, get them to understand what they could do, and then when they make that connection, I suspect that this group would go out and do more things as they continue to get older. So to me, when we talk about service learning, it's not about doing, it's about figuring out exactly what works. That reflection part is very, very critical.
So refashion. So one word or one sentence?
Okay, wasn't expecting that. Then I'll probably summarize by saying OIC. OIC, to be open, to do something of your interest, and really to commit to it.
I think for me, friendship again is really important. And also, if you're friends, you're able to role reverse also, being able to be in the shoes of the beneficiary. Maybe just to end off, one very simple story. We had a group of NUS students wanting to come and help and teach the poor migrant workers, and they said, we want to teach them English so that they can, get on in life. So I said, cool. Is there another way that you can think of another way of doing this program? And I said that, how about, is it possible that we learn Bengali instead? Because many of our volunteers need to communicate. They look at me and then they decide, okay, maybe it's a good idea to try. So they did, and what happened was they then organized with our migrant workers a Bengali class. And it was then they put it on Facebook, they did this little, they drum out all the publicity and all that, and it was oversubscribed because many people, so we had so many people, over 3 weekends, learn Bengali. Singaporeans, but guess who the teachers were, or the lecturers? The migrant workers. And with that, this NUS group actually became very good friends with these people who they had to work with to run this program of theirs. And with that friendship and being able to allow a role reversal, as it were, this NUS group has come back again. So I think that's important, to be in the shoes of our beneficiaries and allowing them space to speak to us and to learn from them.
Okay, thank you. Then Ming Shen.
My ex-ED from the VW that I was working once told me this phrase that I still remember now. If not you, who? If not now, when? Yeah, so start now. As in, sometimes we keep thinking a lot, right? When we are very busy and we're so occupied. Yeah, but the thing is, if you start now, by just go and start volunteering and all, sooner or later, you have, I think it will help you in terms of building that interest and community itself. And just now, one more avenue, where besides the VWO, you can also volunteer at Youth Corps Singapore. Yeah. So Youth Corps Singapore, it's a national body that actually encourages youth volunteerism itself. With that, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's start now. Thank you for your sharing and thank you for your tips. Let's work together to create an impactful ecosystem in Singapore. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the plenary speakers. Could we please invite you to remain on stage for presentation of tokens of our appreciation. The tokens of appreciation are from the art faculty, a social enterprise by Pathlight that serves as a platform to promote the special talents of people with autism and related challenges. Pathlight School is the first autism-focused school in Singapore that offers Singapore's mainstream academic curriculum together with life readiness skills. We would like to invite Professor Cheong Hee Kiat, President of Singapore University of Social Sciences, to present the tokens of appreciation to our speakers. Professor Cheong, please.
Firstly, Mr. Tan Chuan-Jin. Secondly, Dr. Goh Wei Leong. Mr. Puvan Ariaratnam. Dr. Andrew Lim. Mr. Cho Ming Siu. And last but not least, Dr. Carol Ma. Once again, let us put our hands together for the speakers and the moderator of the plenary session 1. Shall we take a group photo? Sorry, could we also invite the invited guests of SUSS, YCS, and NCSS on stage for a group photo?
Thank you once again to all plenary speakers and our moderator, Dr. Carol Ma. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the morning's program at the Enabling Village. Lunch and our afternoon program will be at Linky Community Club, a short 5 minutes walk. We are bringing you into the community to learn more about the community. Please follow the directional signages or the ushers dressed in black in the lunch venue.
In addition, you may wish to follow Mr. Yong Jiaquan. Mr. Yong, can you wave? Yep. And he will assist you with the navigation to LKCC.
There are tables designated for discussion of social issues and service learning related topics at lunch, hosted by fellow practitioners. We highly encourage all of you to join like-minded participants in the discussion at lunch. We'll see you again at Linky Community Club. Thank you.
Thank you.